Hey everyone, it's Siddhi from Voice in the Age of the Machine, a field guide for makers of the future. This series features profiles of artists of all kinds, all over the world, who are co creating with AI and exploring how technology can serve human imagination, not override it. Today, I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Kavan the Kid, aka Kavan Cardoza. He's a filmmaker whose journey spans both traditional storytelling and cutting edge generative AI. He's the co founder of Phantom X, which is an AI first studio pushing the boundaries of narrative visual language and production workflows. He's the director of Echo Hunter, which, if you haven't heard of yet, is a landmark sci fi short, in my opinion, produced in collaboration with Arcana Labs. At just under 30 minutes, Echo Hunter is one of the first films to merge fully AI generated visuals with a fully SAG AFTRA approved cast, a hybrid approach that's sparking conversations across Hollywood tech and the creative world. Kavan's move into generative filmmaking is more than just a pivot. I think it's a reinvention. His viral shorts, technical collaborations, and now his studio work are all shaping what the future of filmmaking can look like when the director's chair includes both a human and a machine. So, Kavan, thank you for joining us. I think this conversation couldn't be more timely.
Thank you so much for having me. And what an intro. Wow, I feel so honored.
I was at AI on the lot, and that's the way that people were talking about Echo Hunter, right? I think it does feel like a real pivot and reinvention.
I mean, when we set out to make it, the idea was to try and do, something bigger than what we had done before. With every by long form, I mean like something that's longer than, 5 minutes project we've done. We've tried to just internally for ourselves raise the bar of what we can do and what we can achieve. It's so important to, as you mentioned in the intro, to bring so many people from the human element in and to maintain that, especially where there are things that I feel like AI just doesn't do necessarily well. And also, putting it in the hands of professionals for each of their crafts.
What's the Kavan story? What was that moment in your life that made you say, "Hey, I want a career in filmmaking"?
Oh my gosh, since the beginning. It's probably like when I was like 5 years old. I wanted to be one of two things: a filmmaker or a basketball player. Played basketball my whole life, but then I stopped growing at 5'10", so that dream quickly started to disappear. And I was like, oh well, filmmaking's the way it's gonna be then. But I had always, ever since I was a kid, I would, like steal my parents' home video camera and record my action figures and make, terrible little action figure films. I went to film school when I was 18 in Florida at Full Sail, and then moved to Los Angeles. And in that period, I made a bunch of rap videos with, a bunch of my broke friends who were rappers. And then surprisingly, several of them ended up getting signed to major labels. So then that was able for me to transition into working with major labels and doing major label videos.
Was there a defining moment in your career where you realized that AI could shift everything?
Literally the first time I used Midjourney, even though it was just like a blob, I generated Deadpool, and like the concept of him was there, like the shape roughly of his head, and the black parts right here, and the little white slits for the eyes, and then the red. Nothing of like what actually resembled, but I was like, it's there in the mess. And knowing technology, it gets better, throughout time. And everything I've always said with tech is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so I knew at that moment, I was like, oh, this is going to be really crazy. And then with each iteration of Midjourney got better, I was like, wow, this is kind of blowing my mind. Once, you go from that, then it's like, okay, people are actually, they were kind of cartoony looking, but now they look like people. And the big argument was like, oh, they've got 6 fingers or 7 fingers, and that was I remember the meme that went around. It was like, ask AI to do this. And it's like the handshake and the hands are just like all mumbled. And then Runway Gen 2 came out, and you got some very tiny motion into the images, and you were like, oh wow, like there's not much, but it's moving. And so then that's like when I was like, okay, I can start like telling some stories. But I remember the big leap where I got really excited for me was when Luma put out Dream Machine, because that was like the first time you had a character walking and they're actually walking, and you're like,
Totally.
what? And then from there, then I felt like that's when because Sora had come out before, but not public, the whole hype of Sora. And so it was like, yeah, that's amazing. But it's like, it means nothing to me because like no one can use it. So it's like, oh, cool, that looks cool, but none of us can use it. So what does it matter? So Luma Dream Machine was the first one we could all use. And so that was a big moment. And then I felt like after that, the floodgates opened. We came so far so fast.
It's nuts. It's like scary and exhilarating at the same
Yeah.
time. It's
Yeah.
like those two feelings just oscillate constantly in my mind every single day. What was the creative and philosophical journey like for you going from analog sets to prompting, training, and generating entire scenes? I'm curious like what you were feeling inside on that journey.
I would say the majority of artists have some form of training, whether that's even online, YouTube, but they're studying, and they're filling their brain with this data to implement their ideas. Well, the machine is not going to be able to create anything without data that it's trained on. So it's like feeding as much data into it so then it can execute your ideas. A perfect example, like I made a Batman film that Warner Brothers pulled down. It was up for 5 days back in December of 2024. But that was a fan film. It was made from the heart. It was because I just finished watching The Penguin on HBO Max and I loved it. But I was like, oh, Batman's not in this. It'd be cool. What if we made the story of what Batman's doing during the events of The Penguin? And, surprisingly, of course, when you start prompting, Matt Reeves as Batman and, Robert Pattinson as Batman, Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner
Yeah,
Gordon, pretty much brings them right up. And you're like, oh,
of
well, there
course
they
it
are.
does.
So that's definitely some what I'd say the shadier side, like the where like that's definitely copyright infringement and stuff like that. I was again making his fan film, was not going to make any money of it, nothing. It was just like, hey, here's a story that I made.
Yeah.
That's what kind of really blew the doors open for us and would essentially birth Phantom X, because as we put that out, I don't think Warner Brothers was overly happy. And Warner Brothers, I love you if you're watching this. Like, still love to talk. Love all the products that they IP that they have there. But all the other studios, hit us up, and we started having meetings with a bunch of studios, and a lot of curiosity around AI. And the other reason we started with these IP based projects was they're a little bit easier to do in the AI stuff, but I also didn't want to start expressing my own ideas until I felt the tools were at a point that I could make something like an Echo Hunter, where even as the tools advance, it can kind of be like a piece of art that people can watch. Like, even though like a year from now it's going to look like a potato, like there's still going to be like essentially the story behind it will be, like that's not going to age. It's just the visuals themselves. But I needed the motion, the movement, the character consistency, all of those things. And when you're doing original ideas in the earlier days of AI, it was very hard to get that consistency. Whereas, like, if you're doing existing characters that the machine's clearly been trained on, um, it was a lot easier to get the consistency.
So known IP ended up being like the ultimate experimentation ground for you
Right,
to
yeah,
figure out if
and, like,
quality was
it
even
was
there.
it
Yeah.
was good for, like, also, like, growing socials, because we when we were making, like, all of our trailers, we purposely chose, like, what we called disenfranchised IP, so we were, like, going solely after IP where we felt like the movies weren't good, so
Yeah.
that's, like, why we did, like, stuff like G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
If someone out there likes the G.I. Joe movie, good for you. I did not, and I was a huge fan of G.I. Joe growing up, so G.I. Joe, Power Rangers is another big one for me. Love Power Rangers. Yeah, and that was like the first one of mine that went like crazy viral, was the Power Rangers one, because I did like a more adult Power Rangers and stuff like that. I mean, now it looks terrible when you watch it, but at the time, after Batman, didn't learn my lesson, and I did Star Wars. But again, I called it a fan film. It was, in the title. And surprisingly, what I was told by someone, I don't know if this is true, but it must be because it's still up. As long as fan film is in your title, Lucasfilm doesn't pull any fan films. They like encourage them. So I thought that was really cool.
And thank
Um,
goodness they didn't, right? Because that went viral fast and it gained massive attention.
I was telling the guys, I was like, hey, I have the Star Wars idea. Veo was fairly new at this point, Veo 2. And I was like, I'm gonna try and do an all text to video film. And so that's why I did Star Wars, put that out in Forbes, called it like the greatest Star Wars film in years, even though I always make the joke that I don't think Star Wars has put out a film in like 8 years. So like getting it by like technicality,
You
but
win by
sure.
default.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, all right, yeah, I'll take it. But yeah, all those tools, and then Veo, I was like, let's do um an original idea. And I had this Echo Hunter idea for a long time, and I felt like it was going to be good for AI because the story revolved around the characters having masks, which again then hides some of the uncanny valley stuff of like characters talking. But the masks are actually like an actual element to the story because the characters can't see their faces for the sake of the memories coming back. I spent like about 3 weeks writing the script, then had the script done. That's when I reached out to the guys at Arcana because I knew Jonathan Younger, who's the CEO there, and he also is at Millennium Films. I was like, hey man, I want to use real actors for this, and it'd be cool to get like one, bigger name actor that we can get in there, like if possible. Do you know anyone? And he was like, yeah, actually I do. And so that's when he introduced me to Brecken, and I met Brecken Meyer, who's an incredible guy. I mean, he's just, I can't say more nice things about him. He's like my favorite person on the planet. Um, and so we got Brecken Meyer and Taylor John Smith, who was just in Alex Garland's Warfare film, as the two leads. And then we rounded out the cast with Danielle Busudi, who's been in like Insidious. She played Freya in God of War. Um, Gideon Burkhardt, who like Gideon, I found him because he messaged me on Instagram. And then I was just like, and he was like, hey, like, just so you know, I was in Inglorious Bastards. I play the translator. And I was like, no way. And I like watched it and I was like, holy shit. I was like, yeah, you're like one of the main characters. Like he's one of the main, guys in the crew. And so I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, do you want to be in it? And he was like, absolutely. And so he was awesome. And he's based in Germany. And then Hannah Balicki and Xander Bailey, who both did an amazing job. So like that's kind of, like how the cast came together. Then, the next hurdle was, okay, we have all these SAG actors. Now we have to get it SAG approved so we
Well,
can
that
actually
was my
use.
that's my big question, right? How did you secure SAG approval? And like what kinds of contractual safeguards come into play when you're thinking about like a mostly AI generated film?
Yeah, so like there's several elements that we went back and forth on. We submitted it as being classified as a film, and they came back and had some more questions, and then it was getting switched over to animation. And we were like, well, it's not technically an animation because we are going to be shooting like the actors that aren't wearing masks. We are going to be shooting their faces and, taking a live performance capture and implementing that using Runway's Act One. So like those facial performances are their facial performances. So we were like that, how is that any different than like, it's not on the same, quality level or financial level, but it's like, how is that any different than what Avatar does?
Yeah,
Like they do the exact same thing. It's a facial performance capture. Um, and so then we ended up coming to a new thing called a new media deal. And so we did a new media deal. And in the structure of the deal was um, the rates, because thankfully the entire cast, worked with us within our budget constraints. So, but we had like a higher SAG minimum than what would be in a traditional film. And then we had to agree that once the film was complete, all models that we had trained on the actors would be deleted, as well as outside of what you see in those 22 minutes, we can't create anything else with the talent. So like without, like paying them again for
that
like
makes
essentially a
sense.
day of work. So like what
What did that
what we
mean for like supplementary material, sequels? How does that
so
agreement
if I
impact all
want
of
to
it?
make like a sequel, I would then need to get another deal um with SAG for the sequel, like as an entirely separate project, because like all those models have been deleted. So retake photos of all the actors, rebuild the models, um, and then and then make the sequel. But like right now, I'm actually working on a prequel to Echo Hunter, but I'm doing it as a anime instead of going SAG. We're trying a new thing out, and that is we're using influencers. And we've gotten some massive influencers attached to this project. I feel like right now, the when it comes to AI and the AI community, it's kind of tight knit. Like everyone kind of knows everyone, and there's just like whenever I see stuff like on LinkedIn or Instagram or X, it's kind of all the usual suspects. And with these influencers, I have a very good belief that majority of their followings don't use AI at all, don't probably have like a great understanding of it. The idea is to like show them something that they think is dope and then open the door of like, holy crap, like I have
Brilliant.
ideas. Like I want to go use these tools to start telling my ideas, and then like let's really blow this thing open. Because like to me the most exciting thing about what the tools of AI can do, it's not about like oh you can make this faster or cheaper or this. To me it's like somewhere out there in the world is like the next Tarantino, the next, like all the legendary directors and writers that we've come to know through the current 100 years of filmmaking, I think are out there but might not have the means or the connections or capabilities. And this could be anywhere in the world. And now like they're going to have these things that like, if they have a solid story and a drive to tell it, I think we're just going to see an entirely new wave of filmmakers emerge. To then the studios can start, noticing like, oh wow, this person's really talented, and then giving them a deal to then set them up, giving them the means that they might not otherwise have had because they never would have been noticed in the first
Thousand
place.
percent. I mean, that really is for me the genesis of this entire project, right? I think when you talk to a lot of studio folks, the thing that is the most scary right now to a lot of people is what is the teenager in their bedroom capable of making with
Yeah.
access to this technology suite? And like that democratization, it might be like the single biggest pivot in creative history towards lowering the barrier to entry for telling great stories to people who are talented enough to do it that I can remember.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think the closest thing before this, but this one kind of blows the doors on that, is the digital camera.
There you go.
Going from like a film camera to a digital camera, that was like the same thing where it was like, okay, it doesn't cost, gajillions of dollars now to go shoot something like it did with film, and you had to go through like the developing, getting it, just the whole process of filming. Cause like when I was in film school was like right at the change, like of from film to digital.
Me
Like I
too.
still took like a 16 millimeter class and a 35 millimeter class, but I remember being like, this is kind of pointless because I don't think we're going to be doing any of this,
Hmm.
and sure enough, we
It's
weren't.
It's something I think about all the time. I generally think that film schools are about a decade behind where technology is at today.
Yeah,
And I think with the advent of AI, like we're in a world where if people don't catch up quickly, we're going to be like two decades behind
yeah.
where the world is at.
I mean, I'm going to be, very transparent. No disrespect to anyone who went to film school because I went there too.
I did too.
Yep, you. But
Yeah.
I'm like, YouTube's got everything you need to know, like in the aspect of like, you can learn any technical elements on YouTube. And then if you want to learn like on set etiquette, start applying to be, an intern or whatever, at a studio to get yourself on set, and you can just start seeing it firsthand. I feel like everything I learned in film school just kind of like didn't even matter once I came to LA and started actually being on real sets. I was like, oh, like, and it doesn't even matter that like nobody cares. Nobody cares if you went to film school. Like,
I know.
yeah, like
Much to my chagrin, after what that film school
same. Yeah.
education costs. I think where there's still like value, I think in some of these schools adapting is like how do you teach people the economic and business opportunities that open up as a
For sure.
result of like harnessing AI, like new business models, right? How do you monetize your work? Copyright. What do you own? And what is the model? I feel like there's baseline stuff there that everybody can learn from, but totally aligned with you. Okay, back to Echo Hunter, or we could go on a film school
Right. Of
education
course. Yeah.
revamp discussion for 10 hours. Walk me through what that hybrid workflow looked like. So you had Arcana trained models,
Yeah.
you
So,
had live capture and an AI render pipeline.
yeah. So like, essentially this, the Arcana, like what I love about their model particularly is, similar to like how there's custom made LoRa's, they've essentially made it to it's a very simplistic process of you just need anywhere like on the low end 10 photos. I think we were doing about 35 photos of the talent, a mixture of photos that we shot on set when we recorded them and like their headshots. I was like, send me like 10 of your headshots. And
Yeah.
then we plopped it into the machine, trained the model, and then you make some slight adjustments. And then essentially what is really cool is you can either use Arcana's image generator, or you can use Midjourney or Imagen or Whisk or Flux or any of these tools, and then you can take the image over to Arcana, and it's like got a paintbrush. You just paint over the face, click on the model, set your percentage. I normally set it at like I think 60%. Click on it, and then boom, it's the person. and then you can do it a ton of times. And so, because each time it'll be like a slightly different variation of them, but it's like it's immediately like I'm looking at them like, oh, that's them. So that was, essentially the model training element. The actual production pipeline was scripting, the casting, SAG approval. Once we had SAG approval, and the funny thing is like prior to the SAG, approval, like of working with the actors themselves, I'm able to like still work on the film, like because it's AI. So like I already like, and how I even got the actors interested. I had the first minute and a half of the
Yeah.
film done, and I was sending it to them like, this is what it looks like, and they were like, oh, whoa, this is awesome. I had a lot of like placeholder of my terrible acting skills in there, like just so I could be editing and moving along. And then once we had SAG approval, that means we have the green light to actually now go and shoot our talent. Gideon, because he was based in Germany. We had him set up his iPhone. My favorite thing was like, I was like, "Do you have like a camera to record yourself on?" He was like, "No, but I have 3 iPhones." I was like, "That'll work." He had him set up one iPhone, record him. He put another iPhone in his pocket for his audio, and then on the third iPhone, we were having him shoot BTS, and then on his laptop, we were zooming with him to direct him.
You opted for recorded actor audio, right, over synthetic voices,
Yep.
and you went for, a traditional composer. Why did you make that choice? And then how did that impact, you think, the emotional core of the performances?
Well, I wanted a very specific sound when it came to the music. And as funny as it is, I was in the music industry, it felt like forever, but I was on the visual side of it. I didn't make music, I was on the visual side of it. So like I'm not the best at the AI music tools. I mean, I think they're good, but like most of the stuff that I've seen I don't overly love. I think King Melonius is probably the best, like at least in my opinion, of like where he makes like a lot of fun stuff that I really like. I mean, there is some AI music in the Star Wars one. Some of those tracks are made with like Udio, and that was by like I essentially asked ChatGPT in a music structure, how do you break down John Williams Star Wars sounds? So it like, words that I'm not familiar with, like, oh, it needs this motif and this kind of this. And so I just like took all of that. And then I would like sometimes write like if it was the bad guys, I was like, make it evil sounding. And then all of those keywords. But with this, I really wanted it to be fine tuned, and I wanted it to like actually have the rising and falling actions of traditional, filmmaking, to where like when the intense moment's happening, it's not like I'm trying to cut like a music video to that part of the music. It's like, no, if I want it there, it's going to be there. But we did it in a very not traditional way of I he would essentially send me like a very stripped down track. I would be like editing so we could move at a quicker pace. And so then I'd hit him back and be like, hey man, all right, on, track 3 at 36 seconds in, I need it to rise and I need it to rise and I need it to be that way until like 42 seconds into the track. Then it needs to resolve itself. And we just would go back and forth like that for hours. Once we had all the rising and falling action points of that sequence, then he would go through and then really spice it up, adding, additional instrumentation and things like that, send it back over, and then we have like a completed track that like just, like sounded just really incredible.
It's the kind of thing that literally sends chills down my spine when I hear stories of how this stuff. I'm sure you have that moment all the time.
I'm thinking I'm becoming more machine than man at this point.
We'll get into that. Okay, lots of people ask questions about the business of running an AI native studio. I think there's lots of just filmmakers who are like, "Hey, I'm now an AI native studio." And so there's just lots of questions around like, "Well, what even is an AI native studio? How would you define what Phantom X is doing? How does something like that become commercially viable?"
It was started by 3 best friends, and we wanted to maintain that core intact and have fun doing, what we're doing. Also, because after the success of Batman and with each project we've had, we've been, very fortunate to not ever have to go looking for work at up until this point. Like we've had so much work just inbound on its own through like the projects we've done. So we were able to grow that studio. We hired a project manager. She's phenomenal. And we're now working with artists on a work for hire case at this moment, because, for us, like the most important thing is just vibe and flow. So like if like everything goes good, then our intention is to sign the artist to the roster, which will happen a little bit down the road. But we have like a very strong core of ethics of how we're going to navigate this, and that is we will own 0% of your ideas. We will own 0% of your IP. We are not going to do anything to infringe on the artist. We want to essentially help them become the biggest thing on the planet and make all the money from their ideas. When we sign artists, it's essentially like, while empowering them to do all that stuff, like, hey, if we've got a commercial coming in, and like they don't have to, it's just if you want to work on it, here it is, and here's the budget. Let's go work, you know? But that way, then like as we build like especially like as you have skill set, you know, like people with different particular styles and skill sets on the ad side, you know, that's going to be great. Like if you have someone who's more fashion driven, or obviously the, you know, more of the fashion companies are going to come to them. If you have someone who's more product driven, you know, like Coca-Cola cans or
Hmm.
things like, you know, whatever the different things are. Some of the people we work with, you know, they come from not necessarily traditional film backgrounds, but some of them come from like graphic design backgrounds, or some form of digital media background. And it's exciting to bring them into the fold, and you know, like they're learning as well as we're learning to like work with them. And we've got to work with some amazing people. And then the idea is that as we continue to grow the company, um, to really highlight the artists, and you know, the idea is like with Phantom, we want to bridge the gap between like AI and Hollywood. Pretty much every project that you're gonna see from us, like if it's like a bigger project, and by bigger again, like, you know, like a 10-minute or longer short film, we're going to be using real cast. We're going to be using real composers, like everything where we can implement like those elements, they're going to be implemented. Anything that we look at as like, hey, this isn't just some social media content, like we're actually making a piece of art, we're going to follow those methods 100%.
Something I've been thinking about a lot, Kevin, is this thing that I've been calling the creative firewall, which is the line between AI generation and protecting human artistic expression. Where do you draw that line when you're working with machines, especially given that you just told me that you might be more machine than man?
I always say I'm more machine than man because prior to I remember a time like it's like when I used to play basketball 5 days a week and all those things. Now I just live on this computer for like 7 days, you know,
Right.
and 14 hours a day. I think like at least where like I find the line, and this will be different for each person, but for me is the storytelling comes from you. The story comes from you, you know, like or a group of people, however many people wrote it, but like the idea is human made. I think once that part is removed, I don't really know how much humanness there is outside of, you know, like if you edit the film and you do this, like for instance on Echo Hunter, I did all the sound design myself. So like, and that was still like building sound effects and sound design, like no different than a traditional, you know, sound design thing. There wasn't AI sounds. Um, so, you know, like I think it depends on like how much input the human element is. When I look at AI, to me, it's kind of no different than um, like the camera. It's just like this is a different camera that I'm using. But, you know, like someone might make the argument like, well, what about set designer and costume designer and things like that? Well, I technically could have those people sitting here next to me and prompting, but the thing is like I'm coming up with those things. It's not like I'm just typing in AI, and then like an Echo Hunter, Garrick ends up with a black helmet and a long brown trench coat and the tan turtleneck underneath. Like that was my idea. Like I told it like this is how I want him to look, like down to the detail. And then like when you're describing, you know, the world and everything, like you're telling it in detail, like this is what I want. So it's like in a sense, like if we had to get real like, you know, granular about it, it's like, well, I was the set designer, I was the costume designer, because like I'm the one feeding all the information. It's just the machine is actualizing it. Sometimes, you know, people will say to me like, oh well, what did you do, like you just typed in like a script and hit enter? And I was like, I wish it was that
I
easy.
mean, the
Like
ultimate
it's
meme,
like
right?
it's
Enter
like yeah,
text
I was like
prompt,
this thing.
exit movie.
Yeah. One of the shots that drove me the most insane when Echo Hunter was the car driving sequence, because AI had a really hard time understanding like faceless masks. So I would be like, the guy's driving and then he looks to his left and looks back forward. I can't tell you how many times I gen the shot and then like like the mask would open up and reveal like some rando dude's face, and he's like looking around, or it'd turn into a motorcycle helmet, or it'd do this. And I had to like prompt and prompt and prompt to like get it to do simple blocking elements, you know. I mean, some of those shots took me like 100 gens to get the shot. Like the tools are great now. Like I expect the stuff to look good. So to me now it's more of like, okay, what's under the hood? What's the meat to this thing? Like what's the story you're actually telling? What are you using these tools to express? Because if it's just like, look at how dope this is visually, well, I mean, that's every movie that comes out.
That's exactly
Literally
it.
every movie that comes out looks great, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean they're good.
Ultimately, when you think about the role of a director's job is to translate a vision into a final product. And so you're still translating a vision, even what you just described with the car scene, right? And all of the micro iterations that you had to make to nail it. Maybe you're translating that vision to a machine compared to translating that vision to a set of 50 people, but you're still translating a vision. And so at
100%.
least my philosophy is that like the role of the director still has as much integrity and importance as ever before.
100%. Yeah. I think the director, the writer, and to me the actor as well, like big time, because you know, you look at stuff like VO3. I love VO3 first and foremost. I just want to make sure that's said out there.
Let's
But
tag Google. I'll tag
yeah,
Google.
Google, I love it. But like, you know, if I was to give it some advice, like I think, you know, like I can't remember who it was, but they made this incredible short. And it was awesome. But there was one part that like it's so off-putting, like took me out so bad, more than like most things, because the way the performances are done in this like text to audio, and like the whole, you know, like everything's just done through the prompt, was like it was supposed to be this like really dramatic moment, and the character's like, oh my gosh, like this, and I was like, oh whoa, that didn't, like, that felt so out of, like it should have been more like a, like, oh my gosh, like kind of that, and then it was just like so over the top. The best way I describe it is like, it's like when you take a theater actor and if you had them do theater acting performance in a movie, because everything in theater is so over the top, but then it doesn't translate over into film. I can't remember who it was. Someone at one of the AI companies told me that they were like, oh well, no, we've actually gotten better prompts, you know, from the machines than we have from real actors. And I was like, well, then who are these real actors you're using? Because like, if
Mhm.
you're using like just like anyone else, there can be good filmmakers and bad filmmakers. There can be good
Yes,
actors and bad actors. But if this actor is talented and is good, these are professionals at their craft and have done this their whole lives, and have worked to master their craft. They're going to give you phenomenal performances.
for sure. I like to think sometimes of AI like a mirror. I've had this experience where I use it enough and then it surprises me, sometimes in creepy or uncanny ways where I'm like, man, do you know me better than I know myself in this moment? Have you ever had a moment like that?
I have the days where I feel like I'm in the groove with AI, and then there's the days when AI is kind of giving me the middle finger. Like, there's like some days when I'm like genning, and I'm like, wow, I was like, each gen's only taking me like 1 or 2 gens. It's like listening exactly to what I want. It like I'm telling the prompt, and boom, it does it exactly. And then there's times like, for instance, that example in Echo Hunter, I'm like, I remember like talking to my buddy Mike, like in our company chat. I was like, I'm gonna punch my computer right now. I was like, I just need this guy to turn his head to the left and then look forward. And I was like, and he's not doing it. And I was losing my mind.
Go Hunter Cavan, it's opening eyes, right? It's opening eyes and it's sparking debate. Have you seen pushback artistically, ethically, commercially to how big of a story this has become? And how do you engage with critics in general of AI generated cinema?
I'm never really one to engage with critics or things like that. I mean, everybody has, you know, gets to have their opinion and stuff like that. Every day I see one more of my friends like come over to what is the dark side, right? You know, because I remember when I first was messing around with AI, and all my friends kept, you know, making jokes that I'm Skynet and stuff like that from Terminator. And I was like, no, no, you know, like it's just another tool and stuff. It is definitely the future. There's no denying like that it's going to happen. Like it's cannot deny it.
It's
It
here.
will, and it's here. It's only going to get better. And at the pace that it's moving, it's going to be here, like as in a mainstream level, quicker than I think, you know, most people are expecting. Does that mean that's the end of traditional film? No. Does that mean it's the end of like movies, like that are shot in all those ways? No. But is it going to be implemented? Absolutely. And will certain jobs change? In my opinion, absolutely. Like we would be naive to say that it's not. Like I remember in school there was the old photo of the people when phones required like an operator to literally take out the thing and change the line. So like it could be like boop boop boop, and like a room filled with people doing that. Well, now all that's done by machines. So like there's going to be change. Like that's just inevitable. Or when you look at kind of what we talked about digital cameras, the big one for me, because I also did photography, was I like my first camera that I had was a 5D a Mark II,
Mine
Canon 5D
too.
Mark
That
II.
was
Yeah.
my
Yep.
graduation gift.
Yep. Okay. And I remember several of the more, traditional experienced photographers who shot on film saying to me that you're not a real photographer if you're shooting on that because you're not in the dark room, you're not developing, you're not burning and dodging, you're not doing all the traditional practices. But I was like, but I can just do all this with Photoshop. And like I can, if I mess up, it's not me having to spend a bunch of money to like reprint it, rescan it, reburn and dodge it. Like, like I can just be like, okay, control Z fix,
You can
and
still pay your dues in Photoshop.
oh my gosh, yeah. Like I've spent endless upon endless upon endless hours on tutorials and this and like, and mastering that craft. But with that element, at the time, yeah, people shooting on film, this digital emergence. And now it's just gone to the point where it's like, it's like, I mean, like even here in LA, I have a film camera because I still like to shoot on film, but it's a niche thing. It took me like some deep Google research to find like three developers like within like a 45-minute area of my neighborhood. There was three. Or like disposable cameras. You used to be able to go to like any CVS or whatever, and
Mhm.
just be like, here's my camera. Now like there's like one in like the whole Southern California, it seems like, that does that still. Like where you can like take in and get it developed. So it's crazy how it changes. Which obviously all those things had jobs related to it. Those aren't there anymore. But now there's new jobs created. So that's the thing that that people have to remember is just because something changes doesn't mean um, that something else isn't born out of it.
That's exactly it, and I think there's gonna be a brand new ecosystem of what jobs look like in
Oh,
this new
100%.
environment, right? And so I think that a lot of creative technicians, there's gonna be an evolution, and like all these shifts, I think we're gonna see more my guess is just more roles than ever before that we didn't have. Like, we're already seeing the emergence of roles like AI supervisors
Yeah.
on
Mhm.
sets, and that's becoming a thing. That didn't exist 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
I mean this like wholeheartedly. Like, so anyone in Hollywood, please don't get mad at me. But I'm just waiting for the AI guild because they love their guilds. So like I'm like I can already see it like because you got SAG, you got the Directors Guild, you got the Writers Guild. I was like AI guild's coming. We'll have it, and then there'll
I
be a
love
whole
it.
a whole guild for AI.
If you could make one feature request to any of your favorite model providers, Runway, Arcana, whoever it is, what is the one thing you would ask for that would immediately be a massive value add to your creative process?
Let me say two. Sorry, just
Yeah,
because like
let's do it.
one will be my like true dream one, but my first one is like Runway. Please update Act One. It's been like 7 or 8 months without an update. Like I would love to see an improvement there for those facial performance captures. Um, like to be way more refined for the teeth not to look so AI ridiculous. Like I like it like just like more polished, more perfect in actually capturing those facial performances and actually recognizing like one thing that drives me crazy is if I have two people in a shot and one person you can perfectly see their face, but then one person kind of like walks like forward like this out of frame. It'll be like can't recognize a face because it can't detect between the two faces. Like give me a little option where I can click on the person's face and be like, that's the face I want to talk. Um, because you have all these other lip sync models like HeyGen, Hedra, uh, all these other like great, but they only do image to video. I mean,
Mhm.
image to like text, where then
Image,
like
yeah.
it'll animate the character and stuff. But what I want to do is I want to be able to have like crazy camera motion, like so I can either gen my image in Veo, in Kling, or Minimax, then take it and do the facial performance onto it. So like the camera can be like sweeping and moving, but the character's talking. But if I could have a dream tool, would be full body mocap of an actor. So essentially what I just said about Runway, but like I want the whole body. And then being able to generate an image in like Midjourney or Flux or anything like that, and then taking that image and essentially being like, okay, this actor, I want to like connect to this character. So like essentially it'll skin the character with like what's in the image, and then have them like whatever the actor does, moves, however. Cause I just think like there's so many nuances that actors can do, like very little subtle things that can bring you in. And like you hear all the stories of all the movies of uh where the actor improvises or something like that, and then something happens that was never expected. Well, I don't like AI is not going to do that because it's going to do what's based on the prompt, period. And so that's what I think would be awesome. And that's where I meant like having that implementation of maintaining with the actors, because what happens if they do want to do something that wasn't in the script, wasn't there, wasn't that? And then the next
Exactly.
thing you know, you're like, oh, damn, that's awesome.
There
We
you
have to,
go. 5-year tech roadmap right
yeah,
there for all
I'm
the
hoping
model
like, no,
providers.
2 years,
No,
two
let's 2
years.
years, 2 years.
Let's
I
go.
mean, at the pace things are going at.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, parting question for you, Kevin. For creators who are inspired by your work, but are also feeling reluctant, nervous, they don't even know where to start, really, what is your recommendation on where they should start the process? What tools, projects, processes should they be thinking about to kind of enter this next phase with a little bit less nervousness?
If you're just getting started and maybe you don't know if you want to go all in on this, because if it can get expensive really quick, especially if you're not part of like the creative partner programs and things like that. I always have the same two tools, and I've said it from the beginning. That's I would use Midjourney for your images to start, and for video, I would use Minimax. I think Minimax is the most cost effective, but yet delivers the best results, especially with their newest model. It's really like it's on par with Veo, but it's like so much cheaper. So like I think it's a great entry point for someone to not break their bank. You can essentially spend, roughly about $100 a month, and you can start creating and messing around telling stories. Um, and then if you want to go a little bit further, um, with like you want the characters to talk and stuff like that. Depending on what it is, but I would still stick with Runway, because I like the Act One thing. But if you don't want to use actors, both Hydra and Heijen are awesome. And then 11 Labs for character voices. Their new like text models actually really good,
It's pretty
where
sick.
yeah, like you can, tell it like the inflections and all that stuff.
And they've got the mobile app now too. So
Yeah. And then for me, like if you music and sound effects, like there's nothing like I always say this one's a little bit more expensive, but like Artlist is great. And that's not AI, but Artlist is awesome. There's a mass collection of royalty free music and sound effects to where you can easily make your, I think like having all of those elements, you can make a full production and probably, not be spending uh, more than, a few $100s.
Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I know you are very, very busy building the studio of the future, but I think a lot of the work that you've done has just been incredibly inspiring, not just to people who are already familiar with AI and the filmmaking process, but just to a much broader community of artists who are feeling all kinds of very valid feelings about how to navigate the creative pivot that we're in right now. So thank you for being accessible. Thank you for communicating a lot of these ideas in ways that I think can reach artists all around the world. I think what you're doing is very inspiring, and yeah, it's gonna kick off a whole generation, hopefully, of artists and filmmakers who feel like, hey, I can embrace this to really expand the aperture of what's possible with my creative voice, not restrict it.
100%. And thank you so much for having me. This was absolutely incredible. Absolutely loved the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.